Hi and welcome to Mondraker TV. We're here at Sea Otter Classic 2025 and I'm hanging here with Dakotah Norton. Today we're going to be talking about different things on bike setup that you can take away to make you a better rider. Okay, so I guess what I want to talk about to start with is like your rolling stock on the bike. So at the moment I notice you're running the new high rollers, but in the poster on the boot you've got the DHRs, yeah, front and rear. And I know there's tyres for different courses.
So we got the high roller 3s on. This bike hasn't been ridden since the last race run of at Mount St. Anne. So
yeah,
conditions there were a little bit slippery. We needed grip and we needed braking power. Had a lot of loose terrain. Where Fort William, the ground was a bit more hard packed. We needed rolling speed. We didn't need as much braking performance. We just needed a consistent tire on the rocks and the roots and something that was going to roll quick to the finish line.
Yeah, and what about tire pressures? I mean, it's going to vary with conditions. And
yeah, it does vary, but we all stay within some sort of a bit of a gap. I'll run 21 to 23 in the front usually.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I work depending on the track and what forces we're getting. If there's a lot of berms for the rear, I might need to go up to 29, 30, but for the most part, I like to stay around 27. I can't really run a bit lower than that.
And what about, do you ever use inserts?
Well, right now we're not running inserts.
Yeah.
You can run insert, but you're loading the rim a lot earlier. So actually we went to a stiffer rim now so that when I'm landing in compressions vertically, the rim isn't as soft. So you're not getting this effect where the rim snaps back and ricochets and sends you in another direction. So the sooner we start loading the rim, the sooner we're compressing the rim, which for every cause there is an effect, right?
Yeah,
so I'm trying to get the most compliant tire possible and trying to not hit the rim and not compress the rim.
Of course, right. Well, so the second thing I was going to lead on to was the choice of rims. So I know that E13 obviously made alloy and carbon.
Yeah.
And you know, some racers will always go for alloy.
Yeah.
And I know you kind of got the freedom of choice, but you're on carbon on an alloy frame.
Yeah. So we're running a carbon wheel at the moment, just because it's vertically a bit stiffer than the alloy wheel. These wheels from E13 are great. They have a pretty flexible feel. They're not super rigid like a carbon rim tradition has. For forever, the whole industry was going in a direction of stiffer, stronger, faster. But the reality is that also is rougher. So now we're seeing people start to develop a carbon rim that's a bit more compliant.
We both know that everything is possible to break, especially in the style of racing that you do. And I appreciate that bike sponsors don't like this stuff to be talked about, but I would say that wheels are almost like a disposable item for a racer of your level, not for myself and not for anyone that's going to go out and buy a bike.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a school of thought for a while for alloy rims that you can smash them to the point that you can bend them back and you can do stuff. But then it suggests that you're purely going for the ride feel rather than looking for the durability.
Yeah, this carbon wheel is pretty durable. The nice part is you're not going to flatten the sidewall and it's gonna bend the tubeless bridge down. Like, yeah, then you're going to lose air. These, okay, we might smash them. They are disposable for a World Cup downhill race.
Yeah.
But for that one run, usually you're not gonna deal with them like losing shape a lot. They come back to shape as long as you don't break the wheel completely.
Yeah. Okay, and so you've got the support to have the freedom of choice with this.
Yeah.
If you go back to the privateer days, would your choice be different in the way that you think about the wheels?
Yeah, it really does depend on the product from the company. Like at E13, we have a great carbon wheel. Some companies don't have a great carbon wheel. They're too stiff, and I would prefer an alloy option. I am a big fan of alloy wheels historically, but I've been so happy with this new E13 wheel. I have a bit more durability, and I don't feel like I need to run an alloy wheel.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's roll on a bit. The other thing I was going to ask is there's another factor on these bikes that a lot of racers don't have, and it's about the flex in the back ends, because you can tailor this to, like, for me, I'm not sure, and I might notice it at the absolute stiffest and the absolute most flexible, but how much does this affect your setup on the wheels?
Yeah, quite a bit. So lateral stiffness is something that we play around with a lot, both from the rim itself, the carbon layup of the rim, the spokes, will have the spoke tension and also the rear end as well. So we're running no bridges. So we're having the bike the soft as it can be laterally with as stiff as it can be vertically. So now we're going to a very vertically stiff rim. We're still running the spokes a bit loose. And to be fair, I'm more sensitive to spoke tension than I am tire pressure.
Okay.
Spoke tension is incredibly important to me.
Yeah. So are you having your wheels with a softer spoke tension?
Yeah, I'm quite soft on spoke tension.
Yeah.
I prefer it that way. So historically, you're not going to get, if you have a stiff spoke, you're not going to get that flex from side to side.
Yeah.
But now we have a bit of a stiffer rim, and we're able to vertically.
So you can bring it back with the spokes.
So we can loosen our spoke tension up a little bit and get a bit more flex.
I mean, for a long time, there was a period where some racers would have the spokes soldered.
Yeah.
So it could keep a super high tension, which it never made sense to me.
And everything on this bike is a constantly evolving ecosystem. If you change one thing, it has an effect on something. So this bike is completely optimized for the chassis configuration that we have right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it blows my mind how much can be done on these modern race bikes, but also how tuned in you are to that fact.
A lot of that is riding the same trail over and over again and making the changes.
Yeah.
As a World Cup downhill racer, I'm going out to ride the same track 8 times at the absolute limit. And when you do that, you can notice those little changes you're making. But if you're not riding the same track every time, it's so hard to feel these small nuances. And I'm talking, we may move the crowns 2 millimeters, and that's a huge change for me. Or moving the bars.
2 millimeters.
2 millimeters right here is a huge change.
Yeah.
Or 2 millimeters is a mile at the bottom bracket. On this Mondraker race bike, we have a removable BB, and we have a 204.6 negative spacer. Ronan's on the 6, I'm on the 4, Pinky's on the 2, and those are huge differences.
Wow. Completely different. Okay, right. Suspension then. So everyone out there knows this, you've got to get a good sag point on there and then meet a happy medium of on a low speed compression, high speed, stuff like that. What can you describe like your feel and your preference, how you like it?
Yeah, I think my bike is a little stiffer in the front than the rear, but I do still run a pretty soft fork. For me as a World Cup downhill racer, I'm always changing grip. We're looking for the wheel to follow the ground, and if the front wheel is starting to lose contact with the ground, you don't have any grip, right?
Yeah.
So as you can see, I got these big handlebars. I actually run a bit of a higher bar because I run a bit of a softer fork. My fork is still very supportive, but at the same time, it's soft off the top and runs a bit more sag than most.
What about in terms of damping with your return speed, like your rebound? Quick, slow, fast?
As fast as I can hold on to.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. The goal is to keep the tire in contact with the ground.
Yeah.
And you almost want it just fluttering and constantly moving to track the ground.
Of course, yeah.
My rebound is almost all the way as fast as it'll go.
The same on the rear?
Yes.
And how does that feel with jumping and stuff? Because a lot of beginner riders or people that aren't clued up with suspension, the natural thing is to click on that rebound so they don't get bucks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's more of a rider issue, honestly.
Yeah.
It's as one of the best to do what we do, you're constantly working on foot pressure, and so much of changing direction, floating, turning, compressing, all what we're doing on the bike to build a fast World Cup race run is foot pressure.
Yeah.
So I've actually had to teach myself not to push the bike into the corner or not to push the bike into the jump. So you see all these kids, the Schrauping phase, right? Where they want to slam into the jump and then do crank flips and stuff. And for me, in my racing, I actually have to set my bike up fast to get grip. And then I have to teach myself not to push in at some places because I'm not running enough tire pressure or I'm running too fast the rebound to load the bike, because then it's going to get a bunch of energy and spring back on me.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about advice for the person that's going to go out and buy a bike tomorrow, going to buy a 150 bike. What would you say is the most important thing with suspension to get right?
Yeah, I think starting with sag is number one, right? Making sure you got the right spring on your bike, making sure your sag point. And for the most part, the clicker range has been developed by athletes, so the average consumer should be somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
We as World Cup downhill racers do all this testing, right? And we find where it works the best over the group of riders that are racing these bikes, right? So for the most part, the range should be pretty close. And then I would look up the manual or go a lot of these, both Fox and RockShox, they have great systems that have been developed to help get the rider in the right place. But all of that starts with sags.
Yeah, most important thing. Okay, right in the moment, I noticed you've got the Yoshimura flat pedals on, but on all your race shots, you're clipped in, so you clearly chop and change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're working on some stuff, so really, really happy to be working with the Yoshimura guys. But for display, we got the flats on.
Yeah. So do you ride flats away from racing?
Yeah, I do actually. That foot pressure thing we were talking about, right? It's really good. I don't think enough people ride flat pedals, so I'll do downhill laps with flat pedals. Try to really work on dropping my heels and keeping my feet in contact with the bike.
Yeah, I run flat pedals all winter.
Yeah.
The same thing, you get lazy if you're only clipping.
Yeah,
but I prefer clips any day. But
yeah. When it gets rough in the summer and the speeds start coming up, then I'll go back to the clips. And for racing, clips are
Did you used to race on flats?
No, never have I.
Clips, right.
But the only time I've had flats on my bike were riding dirt jumps.
Yeah, because I've always got a theory that people that run flat pedals on their race downhill bikes, they're the people that will wreck rear wheels faster just because the way you run.
Because they load the bike so much.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And the setup will be totally different.
I mean, it's hard to lift and get light over things when you've always been running flats.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, you've got to change silencers on. I don't think we need to touch base on that to keep everything quiet and working. But the rear hub, I'd kind of forgotten about, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I actually don't know too much about this, but I know about the O-chain and I know about various other systems. Can you just tell us how that might work for you?
Yeah, so I'm running the Sidekick hub, and it actually disconnects when I'm rolling, and it allows me to not have any pedal kickback. So it's almost like there's no chain on the bike when I'm rolling.
Yeah.
And then it reconnects when I start pedaling.
Yeah.
And then what it doesn't do is, we for years we went to high pivots, we went to all these bike frame systems to fight pedal kickback. And now I think we're seeing so much of people come back around now that we have the O-chain or we have this gray hub from E13 that are allowing us to actually not have to worry about pedal kickback. Now we're able to run some suspension systems that are a little better at generating speed, pumping, but in the past, the only downside was the pedal kickback.
Yeah. I mean, I coming from the journalist side of me, I've seen the same thing. People try and fight it in all these different ways, but whatever you do is going to be a compromise. And the best compromise for the oval ride has always been like a lower pivot configuration in general. So,
and for me, I want to have the least amount of rattle or vibration coming in, guys. We do so much. You see us with the mass dampers on the bike. You see us, running different parts to try to actually deaden those vibrations.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to feel is my tires on the ground. I want to feel if I'm starting to slide, feel how much grip I have, so I can maximize that.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm running the STFU to try to keep that noise and vibration down.
It's funny you say that I've got friends who ride with headphones. I can't do it. I need to hear the grip.
Yeah, and I can physically feel if I'm sliding or not. Really be able to feel that traction.
Okay, and the last one, I mean, it's been documented so much, but let's just talk a little bit about your cockpit position. So 75s?
So 75 rise.
Yeah.
780 reach.
Yeah.
785 reach.
Yeah.
40 stem, 48 crown.
And just looking at the tilt, I mean, so almost in line with the forks.
Yeah.
Going back, but your levers are quite far down.
Yeah, my brakes, I want them to be about in line with my hand when I'm riding. I don't want to have a ton of load into my wrist. We ride downhill so much and hit so many braking bumps. By the end of the season, your wrists feel like they're sprained from hitting braking bumps. So, when we're trying to find the roughest thing possible to ride, we're trying to find as much comfort in the bike as we can.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's funny because my brake levers, by comparison to yours, are nearly horizontal.
Yeah.
I run a 50 mil. I don't know if I would go any higher. I don't know if it was ever going to suit me in my riding, but it couldn't be more different for your setup.
I definitely ran my levers a bit lower in the past, but I did notice when I was riding some real steep trails that it pulled me over the front, and I was a bit uncomfortable. So trying to have a happy medium between being able to ride the steeps well, but also keep my body in a good position on the bike. Because you see some people, they run their levers so low that they end up
over the front,
and they're not in a great position, especially when it gets steep. It's almost sending them out the front door to begin with, but also at the same time, sometimes people's levers will come up so high that when they're riding flat trails, then they get real far back and unload the front wheel, and then it wants to wash.
Yeah, unreal.
So that lever position is important.
Yeah, well, every single factor on the bike is important, but
it's a constantly evolving ecosystem. If you change one thing, you change 3.
Yeah, I love that analogy. So we do some work with Marquez Brothers who ride MotoGP, and I've heard some moto mechanics say, oh, if you've got a problem with the rear, it's not the rear, it's the front.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of that same thing. Change one thing, you have to.
Absolutely, it's always changing, and you know, if I'm taking 2 mil here, I need to put 2 mil back. You know, my bars are a lot higher, so we actually had to extend the frame. It's constantly changing. You know, it really is an ecosystem.
Yeah.
If you drop a spring rate, you need to drop the fork the same. You know, we're always trying to keep balance.
Do you have like a base setting you have for the year, and then do you differentiate from that for different?
Yeah,
races?
and very little. A click here, 2 clicks there, a spring rate. You know, it essentially comes to we're always within 5%. Okay. Right. So if you have 24 clickers, you know, we're changing things in a percentage range.
Yeah.
You know, so I might go 5% softer, 5% stiffer. The bars might come 5% higher, but for the consumer at home, it's a very small change.
Yeah.
But you don't want to upset. You make drastic changes, you start really upsetting
other things.
You start lowering the crowns 5 mil. Now your spork needs to be 10 psi stiffer. You need to go up 2 spring rates. And it's always changing, right? So no drastic changes, just a little bit here and a little bit there.
Yeah. Dude, it's been a pleasure to chat to you about this stuff. It's kind of like a little thing I wanted to tick off for a while.
Absolutely.
Refreshing as well. So
thank you.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask Dak, please get involved in the comments underneath, and we'll do our best to hassle him.
I'll see if I can get on there and get you some answers.
Good. Thanks for watching, everyone.